Most people have eaten thousands of bananas in their life without ever really knowing how to pick one. They squeeze it once, glance at the color, and toss it in the cart. But there's an old way of judging food, older than supermarkets, older than ripening rooms, older than plastic-wrapped produce shipped in from across the world, and it has almost nothing to do with color at all. Before grocery stores decided what ripe should look like, people who grew their own food and bought from market stands judged fruit the way their grandparents did, by hand, by weight, by patience, and by understanding what was actually happening inside the fruit, not just what it looked like on the outside. Communities like the Amish, who still buy and sell food the old-fashioned way at market stands, by relationship, by feel, rather than by packaging, represent something most modern shoppers have lost. The instinct to ignore how pretty something looks and pay attention to what your hands and your patience can tell you instead. So before we get into how to actually pick a banana, the old way, it helps to understand what's really happening inside that peel. Because once you understand the biology, the old instincts make a lot more sense. Bananas are not picked ripe. They are never picked ripe. Every banana you have ever eaten was cut from the plant while it was still green, hard, and starchy, then ripened later, often thousands of miles from where it grew. This is because bananas belong to a special category of fruit called climacteric fruit, which means they keep ripening after they are harvested, powered by a gas the fruit produces itself called ethylene. Once a banana starts producing ethylene, it doesn't just ripen. It accelerates its own ripening, releasing more gas as it goes, which is why a banana can look perfectly fine on Monday and be covered in brown spots by Thursday. Commercial growers actually control this process with surgical precision, holding green bananas in rooms with a measured concentration of ethylene gas for a day or two at a controlled temperature, so an entire shipment ripens on the same schedule and arrives at your grocery store looking nearly identical, fruit after fruit, year after year. Inside the banana, this gas triggers something dramatic. A green banana is mostly starch, somewhere between 70 and 80% of its weight. As ethylene spreads through the fruit, that starch is broken down by enzymes and converted almost entirely into sugar, dropping to less than 1% starch by the time the banana is fully ripe. This is the entire secret behind why a green banana tastes chalky and a ripe one tastes sweet. It is not a different fruit. It is the exact same fruit, captured at two different chemical stages. And here's something almost nobody thinks about. The calories barely change throughout this whole process. You're not getting more energy from a ripe banana than a green one. You're getting the same energy, just rearranged from long starch chains into simple sugar, which your body absorbs much faster. That single fact changes how your blood sugar responds. A green banana sits at a glycemic index of around 30 to 40, gentle and slow burning. A fully ripe, heavily spotted banana can climb past 60, hitting your bloodstream much faster. If you are diabetic, training for endurance, or simply trying to avoid a sugar crash an hour later, this one detail decides which banana you should actually be reaching for, and it has nothing to do with which one looks the most appetizing. Now here is something you have probably seen shared online, maybe by a relative, maybe in a post claiming to reveal a secret the food industry doesn't want you to know. The claim goes like this: bananas with brown spots contain a substance called tumor necrosis factor, and the darker the spots, the more powerful this substance becomes at fighting cancer. It sounds incredible. It has been shared by the millions, and it is false. The claim traces back to a real study conducted in Japan examining how banana ripeness affects immune activity. But the study was done in mice, not people, and the mice were never even fed bananas. Researchers injected banana extract directly into the animals to observe an immune reaction, the same kind of reaction you would expect from injecting almost any foreign substance into a living creature. The original paper never claims bananas contain tumor necrosis factor at all. That detail was invented somewhere between the lab and the internet. No human clinical trial has ever shown that eating a banana causes your body to produce this substance, and a nutritional analysis of the fruit has never detected it inside. This does not mean ripe spotted bananas are bad for you. Quite the opposite. As a banana ripens toward those brown freckles, its antioxidant content genuinely rises, and many people find an overripe banana far easier to digest than a green one. The peel itself acts as a natural barrier the entire time, which is why a banana covered in brown spots is not a spoiled banana. It is simply a banana that has finished a chemical process, and there's no way for bacteria to get inside and make it unsafe, so eat the spotted ones without guilt. Just don't repeat the cancer claim, because it isn't real. While that myth was circulating online, a real discovery was happening quietly in clinical research, and almost nobody outside of medical journals ever heard about it. Researchers at Newcastle and Leeds universities ran a long-term clinical trial called CAPP2, following nearly 1,000 patients across more than 40 medical centers around the world. Every participant in this study had Lynch syndrome, an inherited condition that dramatically raises the risk of developing cancer throughout the body. Starting in 1999, some of these patients were given a daily dose of something called resistant starch, in an amount equal to eating one slightly green banana every day for an average of 2 years. 10 years later, when researchers checked the results, the numbers were striking. Patients who had taken resistant starch showed more than a 60% reduction in cancers outside the bowel, with the strongest protection showing up against some of the hardest cancers to catch early: esophageal, stomach, pancreatic, and bile duct cancer. And the protective effect didn't fade once people stopped taking it. It was still measurable a full decade later. Here is why this works. Resistant starch is exactly what it sounds like. Starch that resists digestion in your small intestine. Instead of being broken down and absorbed early, it travels intact all the way down to your large bowel, where the bacteria living there ferment it into short-chain fatty acids. One of these, called butyrate, appears to play a direct role in suppressing tumor growth and reshaping how your body processes bile acids that can otherwise damage DNA over time. And this is where the banana you choose actually matters scientifically, not just for taste. A green banana, the kind most people pass over at the grocery store because it looks underripe, is loaded with this resistant starch because that starch hasn't been converted into sugar yet. A fully ripe yellow banana has almost none left, which means the entire instinct most shoppers have to wait for a banana to turn perfectly yellow before eating it may be working against one of the most genuinely protective compounds the fruit has to offer. Once you understand that ethylene gas drives everything, the old storage tricks people have used for generations suddenly make a lot more sense because they aren't superstition. They are basic chemistry applied at home. Most of a banana's ethylene escapes from one specific spot: the stem, the place where the bunch was cut from the plant. From there, the gas spreads outward and settles around the fruit, slowly turning it from green to yellow to brown. This is why wrapping the stem tightly in plastic wrap or foil genuinely slows ripening down. You are not stopping the chemistry. You're simply trapping the gas at its source, instead of letting it spread freely across every banana in the bunch. This is also why breaking a bunch apart and separating the bananas, instead of leaving them piled together in a bowl, slows everything down. A tight cluster of bananas concentrates ethylene around itself, each banana speeding up its neighbor. Pull them apart, hang them, give them space, and that chain reaction weakens. And it's why keeping bananas away from apples, pears, and avocados matters more than people realize. Those fruits are heavy ethylene producers themselves, and storing them side by side accelerates everyone in the bowl. One more detail worth knowing: don't refrigerate a banana before it's ripe. Cold temperatures slow down the enzymes responsible for ripening so dramatically that the banana can stall out half-finished, the peel turning gray and blotchy while the inside never properly sweetens. Once a banana is ripe the way you want it, refrigeration is fine for slowing further decline. But timing matters, and putting an unripe banana in the fridge is one of the most common ways people accidentally ruin a good piece of fruit. Temperature does the opposite job, just as powerfully. Warmth speeds every one of these enzymes up, which is why a banana left near a sunny windowsill or on top of a warm refrigerator ripens noticeably faster than one kept in a cool pantry. If you've ever wondered why a bunch left in a hot car for an afternoon comes back almost fully brown, this is the entire explanation. There is no trick to it, no mystery ingredient, just heat accelerating a chemical reaction that was always going to happen anyway, only faster than you expected. Humidity plays a quieter role in the same story. A very dry environment pulls moisture out of the peel faster than the fruit inside can compensate, which is part of why bananas left uncovered in an air-conditioned kitchen can look dull and dried out, even while the flesh underneath is still perfectly good. Wrapping or loosely covering fruit doesn't just trap ethylene, it also helps hold a little of that moisture in place, which is one reason old-fashioned root cellars and cover market baskets kept produce looking better for longer than an open countertop ever could. Here's something you've probably never thought to ask, despite eating this fruit your entire life. Why is a banana curved? It isn't an accident, and it isn't because it's reaching for the sun, despite what you might have heard. The real explanation involves two competing forces acting on the fruit as it grows. The first is called negative geotropism, which simply means the fruit grows upward against gravity instead of hanging straight down the way you'd expect something heavy to fall. The second is phototropism, the tendency to bend toward available light, a trait that made sense back when wild banana plants were competing for sunlight, filtering down through a dense rainforest canopy. Inside the growing fruit, a plant hormone called auxin distributes itself unevenly, causing cells on one side to stretch and elongate faster than cells on the other side. That mismatch in growth speed is the entire reason for the curve. It has nothing to do with the fruit reaching for anything emotionally or instinctively. It is simple, measurable plant biology, hiding in plain sight and something you've held in your hand 1,000 times. Now here is something that should genuinely concern anyone who eats bananas regularly, because it has already happened once before in living memory. Almost every banana sold in stores today belongs to a single variety called the Cavendish. Not just a similar type, the literal same plant, cloned over and over again, because Cavendish bananas can't reproduce through seeds at all. They carry 3 full sets of chromosomes instead of 2, which makes them sterile. Those tiny black specks you sometimes notice running through the center of a banana aren't seeds, they're aborted ovules, leftover evidence of a fruit that lost the ability to reproduce naturally a long time ago. This isn't new, and it isn't the first time it's happened. Before the Cavendish, the dominant banana eaten around the world was a variety called the Gros Michel, nicknamed Big Mike, known for being sweeter and more flavorful than what most people eat today. In the early 20th century, a fungal disease now known as Panama disease tore through Gros Michel plantations across Central and South America. Because every Gros Michel plant was genetically identical, the disease that killed one could kill them all, and within about 2 decades, the variety was wiped out commercially. The Cavendish only took over because it happened to resist that particular strain of the fungus at the time. Today, history is quietly repeating itself. A newer, more aggressive strain of the same disease, called Tropical Race 4, is spreading through banana-growing regions across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And because every Cavendish plant on Earth is still a genetic clone, with no natural variation to act as a defense, there's a very real chance you are watching the same story unfold twice in one lifetime. The banana sitting in your kitchen right now is, biologically speaking, living on borrowed time. So knowing all of that, how do you actually pick a good banana? Forget judging it by color alone, because color only tells you part of the story. A banana can look perfectly yellow on the outside and still be starchy and underdeveloped on the inside. because ripeness is really about texture, not appearance. The old way of judging fruit, the way people did it long before supermarkets decided what ripe should look like on a shelf, relies on your hands, not your eyes. Gently press the fruit. A slight give under light pressure tells you more about what's happening inside than any amount of staring at the peel ever will. Check the stem. A dry, intact stem usually means the bunch has been handled gently and still has some life left in it. A cracked, weeping, or darkened stem is a sign that ripening, and the ethylene driving it, is already running ahead of schedule. Pick the bunch up and feel the weight of it relative to its size. A banana that feels noticeably heavy for how it looks usually has more moisture and sugar concentrated inside, while one that feels surprisingly light has often started drying out from the inside before it ever shows on the peel. This is the same instinct old-fashioned market shoppers used long before anyone trusted a label to tell them what was inside, weighing fruit in their palm the way you'd judge a coin, trusting touch over appearance every single time. Look closely at how the fingers sit against each other on the bunch, not just at the individual fruit you're about to pick up. Bananas pressed tightly together bruise each other at the contact points, and a bruise that starts under the skin will eventually show up on the surface days before you expect it. A bunch with a little space between each finger has usually been handled with more care and tends to ripen more evenly across the whole cluster instead of one side going soft while the rest lags behind. And then decide what you actually want, because there is no single correct ripeness, only the right ripeness for the right purpose. Choose a banana with green still showing if you want firmness, less sweetness, and that extra dose of protective resistant starch. Choose one that's fully yellow with the faintest hint of spotting if you want the classic balance of sweetness and texture most people picture when they think of a perfect banana. And choose one covered in brown freckles if you want maximum sweetness, easier digestion, and the highest antioxidant content the fruit has to offer, ignoring the spots instead of avoiding them. Bananas don't grow anywhere near Amish farmland. There was never a secret method passed down in Amish kitchens specifically for choosing this particular tropical fruit, but the instinct behind that idea, the instinct to judge food by hand, by patience, by understanding what's actually happening underneath the surface, instead of trusting how polished something looks on a store shelf, that instinct is real, and it's exactly the kind of thinking most people have lost. The next time you stand in front of a pile of bananas, you'll know more about what's happening inside that fruit than most people will ever bother to learn. You'll know the color is a chemical clock, not a verdict. You'll know the brown spots aren't a warning, they're a transformation. You'll know the curve isn't decoration, it's biology fighting gravity and chasing light. And you'll know that the simplest, most overlooked fruit in your kitchen is quietly carrying one of the most studied, most protective compounds in modern cancer research, hiding behind a peel nobody bothers to think twice about. If you found this useful, hit subscribe, because we have a full series, How to Peak Sweet Fruit, Old Amish Way technique on underground cooling, passive house techniques, and off-grid methods that actually work. Every video is real science, real builds, real numbers. I'll see you in the next one.